afternoon, kids. We're happy to have you join us for our first live 2nd to 5th grade summer reading program. My name is Kay, and this is Kim, and we're some of the librarians here at Bradford Public Library, and we've picked out some stories and some different activities for you to enjoy during this summer reading series. And you did get 2 bags that go with our program today, and we want you to just take those and put those aside. We'll do those later. And parents, if you can go on and make comments on the site to let us know how many children are viewing our video, we would appreciate it. That kind of gives us some idea of how many children we're reaching. And also, if you take any pictures of your children during this time, during the activities or after the activities with our projects, please post them online. We'd love to see them. And Kim is going to go ahead and start with our first story. And so sit back and enjoy.
The Skinners are watching.
Hi, Skinners. Jack and the Beanstalk. Jack lived with his mother in a little cottage. It had a dormer windows and green shutters whose hinges were so rusty that the shutters wouldn't shut. Jack had taken some of them to make a raft with. He was always trying to make things that seemed like the things in books, rafts or sledges, or wooden spearheads to play at savages with, or paper crowns with which to play at kings. He never did any work, and this was very hard on his mother, who took in washing and had great trouble to make both ends meet. But he did not run away to sea or set out to seek his fortune, because he knew that would have broken his mother's heart, and he was very fond of her. Though he wouldn't work, he did useless petty things for her, brought her bunches of wild flowers, and made up songs, sad and merry, and sang them to her of an evening. But most of the time he spent in looking at the sky and the clouds, and the leaves, and the running water, and thinking how beautiful the world was, and how he would love to see everything in it. And he always seemed to be trying to dream one particular dream, and never could quite dream. Sometimes the thought of his mother working so hard while he did nothing would come suddenly upon him, and he would rush off and try to help her. But whatever he did turned out wrong. If he went to draw water, he was sure to lose the bucket in the well. If he lifted the wash tub, it always seemed to slip out of his fingers, and then there was the floor to clean as well as the linen to wash all over again. So that is always ended in his mother saying, "Oh, run along, for goodness sake, and let me get on with my work." And then Jack would go and lie on his front and look at the ants busy among the grass stalks, and make up a pretty poem about dignity of labor, or about how dear and good mothers were. But poetry, however pretty, is difficult to sell, and too got poorer and poorer. And at last, one day, Jack's mother came out to where he was laying on his back, watching the clouds go sailing by, and told him that the worst had come. "No help for it," she said. "We must sell the cow." "Oh, let me take it to the market," cried Jack, jumping up. "I shall pretend to myself I'm a rich farmer with a cow to sell every market day." So the rope halter, with Jack at one end of it and the cow at the other, started off down the road. "Ask for 5 gold pieces for her," said the mother, "and take what you can get, and don't let the grass grow under your feet." Jack went along very slowly and kept his eyes fixed on the ground, because if the grass did grow under his feet, he wanted to watch it growing. So This was how it was, that he ran plump into something hard and looking up saw a butcher in his wagon. "Why don't you look where you're going?" the butcher asked crossly. "Because I thought I might see you," said Jack. "Ha! I see you're a clever boy," said the butcher, not at all offended. "Thinking of selling your cow?" "Well," said Jack, "that was rather the idea." "And what's the price?" "5 gold pieces," said Jack boldly. "I wouldn't rob you of her by offering such a poor price," said the butcher kindly. "Look here." He pulled out a handful of large, bright-colored beans. "Aren't they beautiful?" he said. "Oh, they are," said Jack. And they were. They had all the colors and all the splendor of precious stones. "Well, it is a bargain?" the butcher asked. "Oh, yes," said Jack. "Take the ugly old cow." And with that, he took the beans, thrust the end of the rope into the butcher's hand, and hurried off toward home. I don't think I better tell you what happened when he told his mother what he had done. You can perhaps guess. I will only say that it ended in his mother throwing the beans out of the window and sending Jack to bed without his supper. Then she spent the evening ironing, and every now and then a tear fell down and hissed and fizzled on the hot iron. Next morning Jack woke up, feeling very hot and half choked. He found his room rather dark than usual, and at first he decided it was too early to get up. Then, as he was just snuggling the blanket closer round his neck, he saw what it was that was shutting out the sunshine. The beans had grown up into a huge twisted stalk with immense leaves. When Jack ran to the window and pushed his hand out among the green, he could see no top to the plant. It seemed to grow right up into the sky. Then suddenly Jack was a changed boy. Something wonderful had happened to him, and it had made him different. It sometimes happens to people that they see or hear something quite wonderful, and then they are never altogether the same again. Jack scrambled into his clothes, ran to the door, and shouted, "Mother, those beautiful beans have grown. I told you I'd made a good bargain with that silly old cow. I'm going to climb up and see what's at the top." And before his mother could stop him, he was out of the window and up the beanstalk, climbing and wriggling among the branches. And when he reached the window, he was almost out of sight. She stood looking up after him till she couldn't see him any more, and then she sighed and went to her son's untidy room to make his bed and set all straight for him. Jack climbed on and on until his head felt dizzy and his legs and arms ached. He had had no supper last night, you remember, and no breakfast before he started. But at last there was no more stalk to climb, and as soon as he reached the top tendril, it suddenly flattened and opened out before him into a long, white, dusty road. He was in a new land, and as far as he could see, nothing else was alive in the land but himself. The trees were withered, the fields were bare, and every stream had run dry. Altogether, it was not at all a nice place. But if it wasn't nice, it was new, and besides, he could not face the idea of going down the beanstalk without anything to eat, and he set out to look for a house and beg a breakfast. At that moment, something dark came between him and the light, fluttered above his head, and then settled on the road beside him. "Oh, mercy! I thought it was a great bird," cried Jack. "But it wasn't. It was a fairy." Jack knew that at once, though he had never seen one before. There are some things you cannot mistake. "Well, Jack," said the fairy, "I've been looking for you. I believe I've been looking for you all my life. If you come to that," Jack said. "Yes, you have," said the fairy. "Now listen." She told Jack a story that made him all hot and cold and ashamed and eager to do something heroic at once, for she explained how the new land he had found had once belonged to his father, who was a good and great man, and who had ruled his land well and been loved by his subjects. But unfortunately, one of his subjects happened to be a giant, and being naturally of a large size, he considered himself more important than anyone else, and he had killed Jack's father, and with the help of the bad fairy had imprisoned the faithful subjects in the trees. Since the giant's rule began, the land had not flourished. Nothing would grow on it. The houses fell down in ruins, and the water ran dry. So the giant had shut himself and his wife up in a large white house with his precious belongings. And there he lived his selfish, horrid life. "Now," said the fairy, "the time has come for you to set things straight. And this is really what you've been trying to dream about all your life. You must find the giant and get back your father's land for your mother. She has worked for you all her life. Now, you will work for her, but you have the best of it, because her work was mending and washing and cooking and scrubbing, and your work is adventures. Go straight on and do the things that first come into your head. This is good advice in ordinary life, and it works well in this land too. Goodbye." And with a flutter of sea-green shining wings, the fairy vanished, and Jack was left staring into nothing less. He didn't stare long, though, for, as I said before, he was a changed boy. There are plenty of people who could go in for adventures splendidly, but somehow they are never able to do anything else, and if they don't happen to fall in the adventures, they can do nothing but dream of them, and so have a poor time of it in this world. Jack was one of these people, only he, you see, had got out of this world and had fallen in with the adventures of the bargain. He went along the road, and when he came to a large white house, the first thing he thought of doing was, curiously enough, to knock at the door and ask for something to eat, just as you or I would have done if we had gone up a large beanstalk without our breakfast or our last night's supper. "Go away," said the old woman who opened the door, just as many people do if you ask them for something to eat and they don't happen to know you. "My husband is a giant, and he'll eat you if he sees you." "You needn't let him see me," said Jack. "I haven't had anything to eat for ages. Do give me something, there's a good sort." So she took him in and gave him some bread and butter and a poached egg. And before he was halfway through it, the whole house began to shake. The old woman seized Jack, put his eggy plate into his hand, pushed him into the oven, and closed the door. Jack had the sense not to call out, and he finished his egg in the oven. Then he found he could see through the crack near the hinges, so he glued his eye to it and he saw the giant, a great big fat man with red hair, mutton chop whiskers. The giant flung himself down at the table and roared for his dinner, and his trembling wife brought him a whole hog, which he tore in pieces in his hands and ate without any manners. And he didn't offer his wife so much as a piece of crackling. When he had finished, licked his great greasy fingers and called out, "Bring me my hen." Jack was rather surprised. He thought it was a curious creature to have on the dinner table, but the next instant he understood, for the hen stood on the table, and every time the giant said, "Lay," it laid a golden egg. It went on doing this until Jack thought it must be really tired, and until the giant was, for he lay back in his chair and fell asleep. The first thing that occurred to Jack to do was to leap out of the oven, seize the hen under his arm, and make off for the beanstalk and his home as fast as ever. I won't describe the scene in the cottage when he arrived. His mother was inclined to scold him, but when she thoroughly understood about the hen, she kissed him instead and said that She had always believed he would do something clever someday. Jack sold golden eggs at the market every week, and his mother gave up taking and washing, but she still went on cleaning the cottage herself. I believe she rather liked that kind of work. Then suddenly one morning, as Jack stood in the cottage garden with his hands in his pockets of a quite new pair of breeches, he felt he couldn't go on living without another journey up the Beanstalk. And forgetting to tell his mother that he might not be in to dinner, he was off and up. He found the same dry, withered land at the top, and although he was not hungry this time, he couldn't think of anything new to say, so he said the same thing to the old woman. But this time he found it much harder to get around her. Although she did not know him, either his face was changed or breeches were a complete disguise. No, she kept saying, and Jack lost his temper when she had said it 22 times. A boy came here before, and he was a bad one and a thief, and I can't let another boy in. But I've got an honest face, said Jack. Everybody says so. That's true, said the woman, and she let him in. This time he was obliged to hide before he had begun to eat. He was rather glad because, as I said, he was not hungry. The giant's wife had only given him bread and cheese, and the cheese was rather stale. When they heard the giant coming along the road, the woman lifted the copper lid and made Jack get in. The giant seemed in good temper, for he chuckled his wife under the chin and said, "Fresh meat today, my dear. I can smell it." I'm afraid you're wrong," said his wife, and Jack could hear by the way she said it that she was very frightened. "It's half the ox you had yesterday, and that fresh meat you smell is just a bit of dead cart horse that a crow dropped on the roof." The giant seemed sulky after that, and he didn't eat his dinner with much appetite. And when his wife was clearing away, he suddenly laid hold of her and shouted, "Bring me my money bags." Jack couldn't help lifting up the copper lid a little bit when he heard the chink of the coins, and when he saw the giant counting out the great heap of gold, he longed to have it for his own, for he knew that it ought to be rights to belong to him or his mother. Presently the giant fell asleep, and Jack looked all around to see if the wife was about before he dared to get out of the copper. And he heard her walking about upstairs, so he jumped out, seized on the bags, and again made off for the Beanstalk. He reached home as his mother was clearing away the dinner plates, but I won't describe the scene. Of course, they were now rich. Jack wished to live in a large house, but his mother said she couldn't leave the bits of things, and when he came to think it over, Jack felt that he couldn't bear to leave the Beanstalk. Another day came when Jack felt he must make another journey to the giant's land, disguised in new smock frock and gaiters. And again, the same thing happened, except that it was harder than ever to persuade the giant's wife to take him in. She did at last, however, after explaining that 2 boys had served her badly, and that if he turned out to be bad too, then the giant would most likely kill her. No sooner was Jack inside the house than the giant was heard coming. The woman showed Jack an empty barrel, and he crept under it. Then the giant came in. He rolled his eyes, twisted his great head about, and swore that he smelt fresh meat. His wife told him he was wrong. This time he didn't believe her. And he looked in the copper, and in the oven, and in the bread crock, and under the sink, but he never thought of the empty barrel, partly, I dare say, because he thought it was full of something that it wasn't full of. At last he gave up the search and sat down to his dinner, and when he had finished, He stretched himself until Jack thought some of his buttons would burst and called, "Wife, bring me my harp." The old woman brought in a beautiful golden harp, which she set on the table, and as soon as the giant said play, it began to give out beautiful soothing music, and the giant presently fell asleep, while his wife went into the back kitchen to wash up. The first thing that occurred to Jack was to upset the barrel, dash to the table, and take the harp, but as his hands touched it, cried out in a human voice, "Master! Master!" For 1 second, Jack nearly dropped it. Then he realized that the giant was waking. He rushed to the door, kicking the cat in his hurry as he heard the giant stumble out after him. But the giant was heavy and only half awake, and by the time Jack was down the beanstalk, the giant was only just at the top. But he was coming down. That was quite plain, for the next moment the great beanstalk shook and shivered with his great weight. Jack screamed to his mother for a chopper, and like the good woman she was, she brought it without asking what it was for. Jack hacked at the beanstalk, and it cut like butter. So when it fell, the giant fell down with it and was killed. And that was the end of him. And now Jack and his mother had plenty to live upon, and might have rented a palace if they had liked. But still, Jack's mother wouldn't leave her cottage. As for the enchanted land up above, well, the fairy told Jack that after the death of the giant, the people came out of the trees, and the land flourished under the rule of the giant's wife, a most worthy woman, whose only fault was that she was too ready to trust boys. The end. Hope you enjoyed Jack and the Beanstalk.
Now we're going to, if you want to get your sack that's marked with the parachute on, we're going to do our first activity, and that's to create a parachute that will help Jack get down from the top of the beanstalk and away from the giant quicker. So if you want to get that sack out, we'll give you a few seconds to do that. And you should have coffee filter, and you should have 4 strings of yarn or some kind of string to tie your parachute lines on. And then you should have either a girl or a boy that came in your packet, whether you're a girl or boy, you'll have whichever one you want. And this is going to represent Jack. So we're going to show you how to put this together first. The first thing, if you want to take the coffee filter, you need to put 2 holes in it on each side, and they should be across from each other. So we're going to do the first one. You want to keep it far enough away from the edge so you don't tear through to the edge. So we're going to use a pencil. You could use hole punch or something like that, but we're just going to use a pencil and poke it through and make our hole. Can you see that? And then we're going to do another one on this side, about the same distance. And poke your pencil through. And then we're going to do some on the same side, almost right across from where the other ones were. And across from this one. Okay, now I might have gone a little fast on that, so I'll give you a little time to make your 4 holes, okay? Okay, are you ready? If we're going too fast, don't worry about it, because you can go back and you can pause it and go back and listen to it again, or catch it on Facebook. We'll save it to Facebook so you can go back and check it again if we're going too fast. You take one of your strings and you poke it through the hole on the inside to the outside, and then you do a little tie on each string, and you try to keep each string about the same width on each side so the parachute lines are kind of equal. Okay, did you see how we did that? We're going to do another one and just poke it through the hole again, and then tie it in a knot. We want to make sure our lines don't get all tangled up, because your parachute won't work if your lines get tangled up. Just two, one knot and then another one. That'll hold it. Okay? So that's our first side, and then we're going to do the second side just the same way. Okay? I'm going to put this one through and then tie it. My fingers don't want to work today. There we go. And then we do our last one. We'll give you a little extra time to finish up here. I might have gone a little fast for you. Okay, so it should look like this. We got our 4 lines down. Okay? And then you can take these lines, both of these lines on each side, and put them together like this, and then just tie a knot in the end. Like that. You can just do that on each side. Okay, so it should look like this when you're done with your lines together on both sides. And then the next thing we have to do is put our figure together. So we have our jack here, and you can tape it on, you can glue it on, however you want to do it. But first thing we're going to put on is his hair. So we're just going to put some tape on by folding it back on each other. Going to put a piece of tape to the back and then tape it to his hair. Whoops, that didn't work. I got to get another piece. Just a minute.
Just won't stick for me.
There we go. So we're just going to put it at the top like that, and then we're going to stick his hair on there. You can glue it if you'd rather do that. That'll work too. But this will hold it. Okay? And then we're going to put his helmet on. So this is his helmet.
I think they both got.
You've got different ones to choose from. You could put a hat on like this, or you can put the helmet on. I think we're going to try to do the helmet and protect him a little bit more, okay? So you just fold your tape over and put it on the back, and then just stick it to his head. Oh, we got it a little tall, or a little high, so I got to reposition it here a little bit. Yeah, just like that. There. Then we got to dress him up. He's got a shirt. You can put the shirt on if you like, or you can just put the pants on. whichever you want. You can color them first if you want to do that. So we got our piece of tape on the back, and we're just going to press it on. And now we're going to do his pants. And so they just clip over the top. I don't know if you can see that very well. And these fold around to the back of his legs. And then what we're going to do is just put a little piece of tape on there to hold him down. And we're going to do the same on the bottom to keep his pants on. You don't want him to get naked, lose his pants during the parachute ride.
Gotta secure everything.
Yep,
Safety first, right?
yep. Okay. So we'll give you a little time to finish up your little guy, but there's our Jack when we're all done. Some of you might have a little girl, so it can be Jackie. Okay? Now, the next thing you want to do is you want to hold Jack up as wherever you're going to do your parachute from. And you may not be able to do it today until your parents are with you, or if you don't have a high place to do it at your home. And we need to drop him from the ceiling, and we have to time him to see how long it takes him to get to the ground. So we're going to do that. Give me a minute. Okay. We're going to go on the count of 3, Kim.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Okay. It took about two seconds for him to drop. So now we have to attach him to the parachute and drop him again, and hopefully if our parachute worked, then the time will be longer. So we forgot to give you something like this in your packet. So if you have like a clothespin or a quarter or a magnet or whatever, you might want to put it to the back to give him a little more weight to help him drop. And then you can just attach the strings to the clothespin, or you can tape him around his hands, however you want it. So we're going to just clip him to the clothespin here like this. Make sure we don't have them twisted. Just a minute, we got to make sure we don't have them twisted here.
Clothespin needs to be turned around the other way.
Yeah. I put my clothespin on backwards. You need to turn it so the clip part's at the top, okay? Like this. And then you can just clip the parachute to him, and then we'll let him drop and try to whoops. Whoops. Just a minute. We're having some issues here. I need to put another piece of tape. And you might have some issues with your thing too. If something doesn't work, you just try something else until you get it to work for you. Okay, so there's our Jack and our parachute, and we're going to time him and see how long it takes for him to drop to the ground and see if it worked. So this should take a little bit longer for him to get to the ground. Count 3. Wait, we didn't count.
We didn't time it. Oh, we didn't time it.
We didn't time it. We
Okay, we'll do it again.
Yeah. Keep it open when you drop it.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, that was 2.9, so it took longer for him to drop with his parachute, so that means that our parachute worked. If his time would have been less, that would have meant that our parachute didn't work. So you have your paper here, and so where it says time, trial 1 and trial 2, you can put the time it took for Jack to fall down, which ours was 2 seconds, and then the next time was 2.9. So then the difference between the two is 9/10 of a second. Okay, so that means that it worked. And you can try this different times. You can use other things besides what we put in your kit. We did some other ones. We used like a half of a plastic bag and put holes in it with our strings. And then you can attach a little Lego man to him. He can hold on to the little strings. Put it in between his hands and then just tape it on a little bit. You can kind of just tape the tape together, and that'll hold it on initially. And then we'll do the other one on the other side. So if you don't, if you want to try other things, you can use newspaper, you can use plastic, you can use the coffee filter. There's different things that you can use for your parachute. So if one doesn't work, you can try something else. And the same with this, you can try your paper figure that we gave you, or you can try a Lego figure and see how that works.
I'm going to try this one too.
Yeah, just a minute, I gotta fix this. And we'll show you how our Lego man works. Wait a minute, I've got to get the timer set. Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Good.
Smooth landing.
Yes,
Lego
he
man.
did a very smooth landing. So see, that one worked a little bit better than our other one. So that you can troubleshoot different ways. And, whoops, I forgot to stop it. But it was faster than our other one.
We'll try the
Okay, now we're gonna do the one we made out, Kim made this one out of newspaper. And what you do is just fold the newspaper in half and then fold them in at the corners, and she taped her string to them. Just a second here, let me do it.
Oh!
Whoops, just a minute, I didn't find it. Okay. And so,
Oh!
That was a good one too.
so there's different ways that you can do it, and we did one with a pig instead of Jack also, so, that's
See if
kind of
that
cute.
one works.
We'll see if that works. So you can have fun just trying different things, an animal, your doll that we gave you, or Legos, whatever, and see which one works best for you, and then you can use that one in on your time, okay? Have fun. Hope it works for you. And next, we're going to do this bag that has the plant on it. And what we're going to do is plant a beanstalk just like Jack had. Ours probably won't grow as fast as his did because his grew overnight, but you'll have fun with this. In your bag, you'll have your paper that gives you instructions and tells you what to do, and also the type of bean that you're going to plant, and it'll tell you how deep to plant it. It says plant it to a 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep, and it needs to go in the sun. And then, well, we don't have to worry about danger of frost because that's past. And then you need to keep the soil moist until it sprouts and keep it in a sunny location. So what we have here, we have some potting soil. And we have a little pot. And then this is a pot for starting seeds and stuff in it. And that can go right in the middle. And then you should have a little box here with 2 seeds in it. Okay? So first of all, we're gonna try to put all our dirt in our pot. Don't worry if you spill a little bit, that's okay. I usually have a mess, so, whoops, there went a mess. Then you just want to kind of even it out. And it said on our paper that we only want to plant it to about 1/2 inch deep. An easy way to do it is just to take a pencil, and if you're only going to plant 1 seed, you just make a little hole in the middle and plant your seed in there about 1/2 inch deep, and then you can water it a little bit and then cover it up and water it some more. If you want to plant both seeds, you might want to plant one on one side and one on the other side, but we're only going to plant one right now. So we're going to take one of the seeds and just put it in our hole. Then we have a little watering can, and we're going to put a little water on it, just like that. And then we're going to cover the seed up, and we're going to water it some more. Now you want it to be wet but not soggy. And you might let it set for a little bit, and then you can tell more once it settles to the bottom. And then once you get your water in it, you want to put it in a sunny location, and it should start to mature in a couple weeks. So you should start seeing a sprout coming out of the top. We want you to take your paper, and at the bottom of the paper it has the date that you planted it. So we want you to put today's date on it when you planted it. And then when you see when it sprouted, when it started to grow up, then we want you to put that date on it when you first see the plant started. And then at the end of summer reading on July 31st, we want you to measure your plant and see how tall it is. And these are some that I have at home. And so to measure it, you just put the measuring stick right at the bottom of the pot, and then just hold this up and see how tall it is. And that's probably a little over 5 inches, 5 1/4 inches tall. And then we want that recorded at the bottom. And when and this one is about a little 6 1/4, so that's a little bit taller. And eventually, if you let this grow, it'll grow into green beans, and then you can pick them and eat them and enjoy them. So you don't have to stop just at the end of summer reading. You can let it go until your beans grow, and you can enjoy it. And if you want, you need to check it like about every day to make sure the soil doesn't get too dry, because the seeds won't germinate if the soil's too dry. You just want to keep it nice and moist but not saturated, and keep it in a sunny location, and check it every day, and add water if it's too dry, or just monitor it, and hopefully you'll have some nice green beans at the end of the summer to enjoy. Hope you enjoy it. Any questions, or if you have any problems with anything, just let us know, and we'll be glad to help you figure them out. Have a good day. We enjoyed having you, and we hope to see you at our next program. Bye. Bye.